All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about the 5 mistakes I see buyers making trying to buy a home in Maine in 2025. And actually, I wouldn't just say in 2025, really since I've been in real estate. So if you are a buyer or you're thinking about getting into the market, this video is for you. I'm going to talk to you about the 5 big mistakes that hurt you when you're trying to get an offer accepted to get into your house. So if you're in this position, you're trying to buy a house, this episode is going to be for you. Let's get into it right now. All right, guys. Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Scott Tebow. I'm a realtor, broker, real estate consultant, but I'm a realtor and a broker with eXp Realty. I've been doing this I've been in real estate really for the better part of 20 years, licensed since 2013. And this is all I do full time. If you want to know more about me, there are plenty of other videos to watch. I'm not going to spend all my time just introducing myself, but I would encourage you to check out a couple other videos if you're going to watch this video. One I'm going to throw up in the screen up here. It's going to be about the purchase and sale agreement. It's a pretty lengthy video, takes you through the whole process. And then you really should be watching the market reports to understand what's going on in the market, specifically where you're buying. And if the market report that I've given you or that I've put on a video isn't in your market in Maine, let me know and I can send you some details on specifically a region that you're looking for, even down to the zip code, the city level if you want. All right, guys, let's get into it. 5 things I see buyers make, mistakes I see they make all the time, hurting their chances of getting not only an offer accepted, but obviously keys at closing. Number 1, not getting pre-approved, really just getting pre-qualified. So people say, well, Scott, what's the difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qualification? So pre-qualification is just a cursory glance. There's no really verification. Yeah, sure, the lender's going to pull your FICO score, but it's going to be based upon the information that you fill out online. Most of the time. Sometimes they do it in person. It's going to be, how much money do you make? What's your FICO score? How many bills do you, what are the bills? Yada, yada, yada. It's really just a cursory glance, and based upon that information, they're going to spit out a letter. It's generally, it can be done really quick in the day. Based upon this information, you're pre-qualified at X, whatever that amount is. Could be 100,000, could be $1 million, whatever that number is. However, when you're seriously thinking about buying a home, you really need to get pre-approved. So I think a pre-qualification letter is a good place to start, or pre-qualification is a good place to start, because if you're having some challenges with that pre-qualification, that's going to give you an idea of what you need to improve in. But really, when you start making offers, you need a pre-approval letter. That's a much more intense discovery. They're going to get into income verification, job, debt to income ratio, what is your debt, obviously what is your credit score, and it's going to give the lender a really good understanding of, assuming nothing changes during the process of you trying to buy a house, what you qualify for. And obviously the more that is done, the deeper that dive is, the better chances of something not going wrong when you're in the appraisal or the financing phase, to make sure that you still qualify for the house. So number 1, not getting pre-approved, just getting pre-qualified. And I'll also give you this little tidbit as somebody who lists houses as well, and who's worked with a lot of listing agents out there. Most listing agents won't even look at you if they're smart. They won't even look at you when they're look at your offer if you just submit a pre-qualification. You really need a pre-approval letter. So keep that in mind, number 1. Number 2, all right, so let's say you go through the pre-qualification and pre-approval and you're all set and you want to start looking at houses. Most buyers start looking at their max amount, right? You should never look at your maxed value, right? So I'm just going to give you some rough numbers. Let's say you're pre-approved at $500,000, just to keep numbers simple. And you start looking at houses between, I don't know, $475,000 and $500,000. You should never do that. And here's why, guys. Because inevitably you're going to find a house closer to $500,000, number one, and then you're going to try to get it, if it's a little bit more, maybe it's 505, 510, you're either going to try to reach for that price and try to beat the seller down, offer a lower purchase and sale agreement to try to get to what your max is. And the chances of you getting that accepted, unless the house has been on the market for quite a while and the seller's desperate, or there's extenuating circumstances that makes the seller really need to sell it faster, the chances of you getting accepted, your offer getting accepted, is slim to none, right? So I always recommend, and I've had a lot of success, not just me, but my team, a lot of the folks here at eXp Realty, we've had a lot of success where, we go with one or two approaches. Don't look at your max, right? Look between 5 and 10% less of your max. In other words, if you're pre-approved at 500, don't be looking at houses for more than 450. I'll tell you why in a second. And number two, either that or look at what you can spend maximum out of your budget when you cover principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Taxes and insurance are a big thing because while your principal and interest, if you're in a fixed 30-year mortgage, won't change, your insurance and taxes, specifically your taxes, will. I've had cases where a buyer was pre-approved, got him a house, and 3 years later, the city went through an assessment and their taxes went up $300 a month. Well, what does that do to your budget? So understanding what your budget is, regardless of what your maximum value is that you've been pre-approved for, is important. But I talked about, getting 5 to 10% less. So if you are 500,000, only looking at 450, guys, if you're at your max, and there's a counter offer from the seller or something like that, you got no room to negotiate, right? You're stressed at your highest dollar figure. So you really want to leave a little bit of wiggle room, to be able to negotiate, or in case there is a counter, you can go up a little bit or down. Depends on the type of house you're looking at and where it's located. But you really don't want to be at your max. It's very hard to get an offer accepted if you have no room to move, right? And understand this, the seller's trying to get as much as they can for their house, and you're trying to buy it for as little as you can, right? So naturally, there's a conflict of interest right there. It's going to be very important that you have some flexibility in your offer to be able to move up if you need to financially. So don't go at your max price that you've been pre-approved for, because I think you're going to have a harder time. Not saying it's not impossible. It has happened from time to time, but mostly, especially in a competitive market, especially if you're in Maine, where almost every county is appreciating in value, be careful when you're at those max values, because it's going to be very hard, especially if there's a counter. Just keep that in mind. Number 3, inspections. I'm not saying don't get an inspection. I recommend every buyer get an inspection. But you got to remember, again, there's a natural conflict of interest. Sellers want to sell their house as fast as possible for the least of money, for the most amount of money that they can get, for the least expenses they have to incur to sell their house, right? And buyers want just the opposite. So you definitely should get an inspection. However, your agent should be able to structure the purchase and sale agreement that stands out to the seller when they're talking about the inspection portion of the purchase and sale agreement and what does it mean. I'm not going to give away all my trade secrets. With us, we do that quite well. And if your agent isn't doing that for you, if you've been trying to buy some houses or put offers on houses and they keep on getting rejected, then there's maybe one of those 3 or the next 2 that I'm going to get into reasons why that's been happening. But don't ask for everything in an inspection is all I'm going to say. There's got to be a limit. And what that limit is based upon, well, if you want more information, then you should probably just work with us, and we'll help you. We'll help you through that process. We have a pretty good success track record. I want to say 9 out of 10 at least of helping buyers buy homes through the contracts and the way we negotiate with sellers. Only because we also sell houses, so we understand both sides of the equation. So that's number 3. Number 4, kind of leading on to number 3, you need to hire a professional that's going to represent you. And I'm talking a realtor. I wouldn't say a lot, but I've heard this over the years. Some buyers I'm just going to deal with the listing agent. Isn't that going to save me money? They know everything about the house already. Biggest mistake you can make, guys, for two reasons. Number one, that listing agent has to do one of two things if they're going to take you on as a customer, not a client. They actually have to let the seller know that if they're going to treat you equally as their client and the seller as their client, they have to do disclosure, do agency that they're going to represent both sides. And what happens when you represent both sides? Most sellers that I've talked to don't want you representing both sides. They want your best interest. They want you representing them only, their best interest, right? So how can you serve two masters as a listing agent? I know a lot of listing agents like, yeah, I'm going to get both sides. Guys, they will if you have an ignorant buyer. So you should always have representation, somebody that represents your best interest in the transaction, not the seller's best interest. I leave it like, if you're going to go through a divorce, and I know this is a little curt, but if you're going to go through a divorce, you don't want to hire your partner's lawyer or your partner's attorney, right? The one that they're using to divorce you or to try to settle, because you're not going to win or they're not going to win. So you want your own representation. But number two, some buyers, I shouldn't say a lot, more and more buyers are hiring their own agents. But some buyers think they're going to save money by not hiring representation and working with a listing agent. Guys, I'm going to tell you that's just not generally the case, because let me tell you something. As a listing agent, as somebody who's sold homes, in my contract, I say, okay, this is my fee to sell your house, Mr. Customer. However, if a buyer comes and they are represented, you should consider paying this amount. And I give them a range and let them choose. But they should pay something, because without them paying something, the chances of them getting a qualified buyer goes way down, right? They might as well just be a for sale by owner and not pay the listing commission and just pay the buyer. But they should be paying a buyer broker fee or a buyer fee anyways. A percentage, whatever that is, or a number, whatever that is. However, as a listing agent, if a buyer comes that's not represented, I'm going to want some of that fee. Some of that fee I'm going to want, because I have to do all the paperwork for both sides. Remember, though, I can't tell a buyer what they can or cannot. I can't make recommendations of what they should offer. I can't talk to them about what they should do for contingencies. I can't do anything like that, because I am representing the seller. All I can do is really just shuffle paper for them. I can't tell them if there's a solar farm going next door, or there's a new, pig farm going next door, or there's an airport being built and you're going to be in an airline. I can't tell any of that. The only thing I can really discuss is if there's a material defect with the property, right? Something that's factual with the property. Anything else I can't discuss. However, if you have your own agent, they can dig into all that. And about saving the money, I just said this. Most sellers, here's my statistics, 92% of the buyers that I work with, when I have a contract and when they're under contract, the seller is paying 100% of my fee for that buyer. Only in that 8% of the time is there a slight difference between what I normally charge and what the seller's going to compensate me for. And that charge I negotiate with the buyer. It all depends on how much work I have to do, right? I've negotiated where my fee was a certain percentage and the seller only offered a different percentage, which is less, and there was a spread. Sometimes I've negotiated that, hey guys, just want to let you know there's a difference in here of X amount of dollars, and what do you think, right? And listen, literally, guys, most buyers that I've worked with are like, I have no problem paying that difference if there is a difference, and it may not be the whole difference. It could be a percentage of that difference or a small percentage, or maybe nothing. It's up to me and my client, the buyer, you, if we're working together on what that percentage will be, if there is one. But 92% of the time, the seller is paying my fee to represent the buyer. So don't be fooled, guys. If you're a buyer, you should have representation. and you should just have clear communications with your agent on what happens if whatever contract you sign, right, with that buyer for them to represent you, number one. And number two, they can't open a door. None of us can open a door for you without a contract in place stating what our compensation is. That's part of the new NAR settlement that happened last year, National Association of Realtors, with the justice system. But that clear communication should happen so you are clear as a buyer, understanding what potential costs you could have, if any, when hiring an agent. And that should be done early so there's no surprises when it comes to the offer and when it comes to getting accepted. So that's number 4. Not working with an agent. You should always work with an agent that's going to represent you and only you in your best interests. We do this all the time. You don't do this all the time. You know, if you did this all the time, then represent yourself. But if you don't, you should have a professional that understands how this works and the negotiations back and forth. Remember, again, there's a natural give and take here between seller and buyer to make sure the deal goes through. And it's very different just to get a house under contract as a buyer to get an offer accepted than it is to getting it to close, especially if there's financing contingency, appraisal contingency, and inspection contingency in your contract. And then number 5, and I hear this less and less, but I'm still hearing it, I'm just going to sit on the sidelines and wait till one of two things happens. I'm either going to wait till the interest rates drop or I'm going to wait till the housing market goes down. Big mistake, guys. Big mistake. And here's why. What happens if the interest rates drop? Well, sure. Now you qualify for maybe more of a house. But so doesn't everybody else that's sitting on the sidelines. So you're actually creating more competition for yourself. Number 2, what happens if the housing market goes down? Still, you're creating more competition for yourself, because if you're sitting on the sidelines, do you think you're the only one out there that's sitting on the sidelines? You're not. Do not, I repeat, do not sit on the sidelines because of interest rates and housing prices, right? Because I can tell you, I don't think the housing prices are going to go down. They may level, they may dip a little bit, but anything significant isn't going to be worth you waiting. Interest rates could go down, but understand, interest rates are just a segment of time in your journey of home ownership. Now, if you're going to be in a whatever interest rate is today for the next 30 years, which is highly, highly unlikely, that's one thing. But did you know that, number one, most homeowners sell their homes every 8 to 10 to 12 years? Number 1. And number 2, the fluctuation of interest rates, while they just seem kind of higher now, only because we've come off a 2.5%, 3% interest rate charge and high inflation 3 years ago, they're going to go down. They're going to go up. They're going to go down. Hopefully they'll ground out somewhere around 5.5%. But don't sit on the sidelines, because there are lenders now that are allowing you to refinance for a nominal fee, $250, $500, to go into a lower interest rate when that interest rate is available. So don't sit on the sidelines thinking that you're going to you're not going to buy a house until the interest rate hits a certain level. Obviously, there's a maximum that you just can't go to. And obviously, you think you can get more house with a low interest rate. But, if you're living somewhere, unless you're in your parents' basement, and you're not being charged rent, you're paying somebody's rent. You're paying somebody's mortgage. So do not sit on the sidelines. So recapping, guys, 5 reasons why a buyer makes mistakes. The 5 reasons why, let me back up. The 5 reasons, the 5 mistakes I see buyers making is, number 1, only getting pre-qualified, not getting pre-approved. Number 2, buying at your max, not having any negotiating power. Number 3, inspections, asking for everything versus having a structured inspection way of inspections done, and clear and concise communications, what you may challenge and what you won't challenge if an inspection report comes back unfavorable. Number 4, not working with somebody who represents your interests and your interests only, working with a listing agent who's representing both sides of the equation. And therefore, how do you serve 2 masters if you're that agent? You can't. You're just trying to get the most commission you can. And number 5, sitting on the sidelines, hoping that the interest rates go down or housing prices go down. Both are a big mistake, because in both cases, you are creating more competition. Guys, I hope this information was helpful. Check out some of my other videos on this channel if you want to know about more about me. And again, you should definitely look into purchase and sale, like an hour video I did probably over a year ago on the P&S and breaking it all down so you understand everything that's in there. And there's some other videos up there. But hope this information was helpful, guys. I hope you're doing well, staying cool. It's been hot the last couple of days. But hey, we're in the heydays of summer here in Maine, and it's awesome to be up here. All right, guys, take care. Scott Tebow over and out. Bye-bye.